Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Aligning Your Project with VISTA's 4 Key Principles. We're excited to be with you today to talk about the 4 key principles that underpin the VISTA program, why each of them is important, and how you can work to align your VISTA project with them. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist with the Corporation for National and Community Service. I did serve as a VISTA member and a VISTA leader, and I participated in many different events throughout my year of service that related to the 4 key principles. I'm excited now in my work as a training specialist at VISTA headquarters to work with supervisors and sponsors to provide training on various elements of the VISTA program. You'll see me in today's webinar presenting, as well as helping facilitate the chat activities throughout the webinar and the Q&A at the end of the session. I'm also thrilled to have with us today the true brains behind this webinar and a very influential and thoughtful leader in our program who will also be speaking with us today. Let's welcome Andy King.
Thank you, Eric, and hello everyone. As Eric said, I'm Andy King. I'm a senior training specialist here with the AmeriCorps VISTA program and CNCS. My work primarily focuses on working with VISTA leaders and training and professional development for them, as well as the VISTA campus. But a lot of my work intersects with VISTA sponsors and supervisors through the materials we develop. So I'm really pleased to be with you here today.
Thank you so much for joining us, Andy. And as I mentioned, also joining us are Kim and Jeff from our partners at LSI, who will be managing the Zoom technology. You may also see them in the chat panel, posting some questions, as well as links to resources and assisting with various aspects of the webinar. Our goals for our session today are that you will be able to explain each of the 4 key principles and why they are essential to the VISTA program. Describe ways that your VISTA project aligns with these principles. Cite examples of each of these principles in terms of how VISTA projects actualize and utilize them. And also purposefully assist your VISTA members in understanding and thinking about their service in relation to these principles, especially with regards to the VISTA assignment description or VAD.
All right, so by now you've heard that there are 4 key principles that underpin the VISTA program. Your organization and your VISTA project probably also have other principles that are important to the program and the community, things that tie into your own organization's mission and the metrics that you have to fulfill that mission. We're going to focus on VISTA's 4 key principles. You may be familiar with them, but we're going to look at their importance in a little more detail and talk about what makes them unique. So we'll start by talking about VISTA's mission statement. We know that the VISTA program is committed to economic equity, but if someone were to ask you what VISTA's mission is, how would you explain it? What really makes VISTA unique among federal government programs? So here is the VISTA mission statement. The VISTA program strengthens organizations that alleviate poverty through the mobilization of volunteers and resources. Let's talk a minute about organizations that seek the support of the VISTA program. Organizations like yours. Many nonprofits are under-resourced and understaffed, particularly when you consider the mission. They're staffed by innovative, hardworking people just like you who are making things happen most often with very few resources. A lot of times organizations turn to VISTA for assistance to strengthen their infrastructure, develop processes, or to generate resources. I mean, obviously if the organization already had everything in place, they wouldn't need a VISTA. So the role of the VISTA member is to support the organization's mission by providing solutions that enhance efficiency and build capacity. And that could be by raising money or developing systems, recruiting volunteers, or creating some kind of lasting change. So by serving with a sponsoring organization, your VISTA members are essential to the VISTA program's bigger mission of strengthening organizations. And then in addition to our mission, as I mentioned, there are 4 principles that underpin the VISTA program. And here they are: ending poverty, empowering communities, building capacity, and creating sustainable solutions. So with ending poverty, every VISTA project and every VISTA member aims to end or alleviate poverty one person, one family, or one community at a time. It's not just about doing good things to make a difference. Each VISTA project must be designed in a way that focuses on helping individuals and communities grow out of poverty. Poverty may look very different from community to community, from person to person, and from project to project. In all its forms, the VISTA program wants to improve lives, help people become more self-sufficient, and give people the resources they need to launch themselves out of poverty. Empowering communities. In contrast to parachuting in and doing good things for people, VISTA members live among and involve community members in planning and carrying out the project. The residents of low-income communities must be part of the process, as they also work to create solutions to problems and to understand their own situations. The sponsor often facilitates this engagement of the community. Strengthening and improving the community is our long-term goal, and that happens through learning about values and beliefs and then applying good community development principles. When communities are invested in the work, they develop a sense of ownership and pride, and they work together to solve problems. Next up, building capacity. So all VISTA members aim to either increase the size of a project, increase the number of people served, improve the efficiency of the project, or improve the project's impact on the community. That is how we here at VISTA measure capacity building. VISTA members help to increase and expand the knowledge and skills of staff, possibly community members, volunteers, and others by building systems and processes for the sponsoring organization to use and to grow what it is they're doing. VISTA's work is not meant to be a temporary fix. Instead, they work to help the organization develop and sustain that work long-term through building this capacity. And the 4th principle here is creating sustainable solutions. Whatever your VISTA members develop or create, whether it's a process, a system, or resources, they will develop them in such a way that people will be able to use them once the VISTA member is gone. This includes relationships that VISTA members have created that will need to be transferred to someone else at the VISTA project. It doesn't necessarily mean that every single element of your VISTA project must be sustained. You should work to determine which aspects of the project should continue, and then work with your VISTA member jointly to create sustainable solutions. Empowering and involving the community also helps to provide needed resources such as volunteers, material and financial resources, expertise, and other supports to maintain the work and progress towards a poverty-free community. So in thinking about these 4 principles, there's an activity that you can do to help look at how well your project is currently aligned with these 4 principles, and then consider ways that you might better align it. So we've created a little worksheet that outlines some instructions, and the goal of this is for you to take a look both at your project plan and your VISTA assignment descriptions, your VADs, and to look for things that stand out as showing how those things, how your project plan and your VADs how they're connected to the VISTAS principles. If you happen to be in the process of perhaps putting together your continuation application for next year, or you're going to be bringing on new VISTAs with new roles, so you're developing new VADs, this might be a good time for you to take a look at them so that you can build in those connections to these principles, and so that they're really visible, that you can see them, they're reflected in the plan and in the VAD. So we're not going to take time in the webinar to do it, but you'll see we've posted a link in the chat there, and so that'll take you to a page on the campus that has all the handouts for this session, and one of them is this workshop. I'm sorry, worksheet, rather. And this is something that you can use as a resource if you're a multi-site project and intermediary. You can use this with some of your site supervisors. And as you've gone through it, if you find that, hey, maybe you need to do some adjusting, maybe things aren't quite as visible, that would be a time to loop in your CNCF state office or a regional office if you happen to be in a region that's in that transition now. They can help you, and they can advise on ways to improve and strengthen your connection and alignment. So anyway, that's activity is just there for you. Now we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about each principle in more detail. So I'll turn it back to Eric.
Thanks, Andy. Let's talk about the first principle, ending poverty. You probably remember by now that the VISTA program is the only AmeriCorps program that is solely and exclusively focused on eliminating poverty. It is the one thing that makes this program unique, although we like to think that we're very unique and special, and also helps us focus VISTA projects on activities and assignments aimed at doing just that, eliminating poverty. We know that this cannot be done in a vacuum because it requires assistance from you, your VISTA members, the community, staff, volunteers, and a whole lot more. For some people, ending poverty means opening up the opportunity to begin living. If you feel that your project does not have strong correlation to ending poverty, which hopefully it does, but if you feel like there's not a good enough connection, consider going back to the beginning by finding out what poverty looks like in your community. For example, ask yourself questions such as, how does your community define what poverty is and who is in poverty? What resources currently exist to end poverty in your community, and how do people find out about those resources? You should think about financial resources, material resources, human resources, and more. What elements are currently in the VISTA assignment description or can be added to it to focus on ending poverty? If your project is lacking poverty data in your community, consider talking with your CNCF state or regional office to see if part of the VAD could incorporate poverty research, ultimately with the goals of putting in place capacity building activities. Take a minute to think for yourself. What would your community look like if poverty was eliminated? How would people be able to live their lives and do what they do if they did not have to focus so much on getting from day to day? And how does the work that your VISTA project is doing focus on eliminating poverty? We know that these questions are not easy, but they may help you think about the activities in the VAD and how your VISTA members specifically are aligning their service with this principle. Principle number 2, empowering communities. Communities are certainly stronger together than divided. The more involvement they have at the end, the more they contribute to projects, the better they'll be. The VISTA members should not do everything for the community because that's not the way the VISTA program works. However, empowering communities is essential because it can really help integrate and involve community members in the process and the work. It really helps them recognize and create solutions that they can own. It's pretty obvious to us, and I'm sure to you, that communities are vastly different, and empowerment is not always defined, interpreted, or implemented in the same way. When you think about your community, your VISTA project, and your VAD, think about one specific example of how your VAD activities empower communities. So that's the chat activity we're asking you to do now. Answer the question, provide one specific example of how your VAD activities empower communities. If you happen to have multiple VADs, you can think about just one or two of them if that makes it easier. For example, it could be that one of your VAD activities has the VISTA member create a curriculum for an after-school program, and the program will heavily involve and be run by community members. Community members may feel empowered for a few reasons. They don't have to develop the program from scratch. They can see all the work your VISTA member did to get the program running. And once the program is nearing implementation, they can see how happy some of the children are to be participating in after-school activities. This activity example empowered the community to not only get involved, but also see how positive difference can be made. And if you're having trouble accessing the chat, I forgot to mention earlier, in the bottom center of the screen, you'll see a button that says chat, so you can actually respond to some of these activities. I know some people have been responding to them, other people were slowly getting into it, but.
Yeah, and this is Andy. I'll mention the controls in Zoom are really elegant in a way that they disappear when you're not engaging with the screen, so you'd have to move your mouse a little bit or your cursor for that menu to pop up at the bottom where you can see the chat. Or, for instance, at the top of the screen, you can see the View Options drop down, but it will only show up if you move your cursor. All right, we've got lots of answers coming in now.
We'll read a couple. So one of them is from Lynn: increased literacy rate empowers all in the community. The community will get involved by becoming timed readers. That's great.
Yeah, so here are a couple that talk about volunteer engagement and engaging community members, residents of low-income housing projects, other types of stakeholders as volunteers. So that's incredible community empowerment, engagement.
Another one is, a couple of them are focused on schools and supporting schools to engage in mentoring programs throughout the state. That really empowers the community and the individuals being mentored to take some action. A lot of responses coming in, which is great. These are wonderful.
Yeah, someone mentioned a collective impact approach that ties in all of the principles, which is incredible. A couple of you have mentioned that.
And I see a couple more responses coming in about recruiting volunteers, not just mentors, but volunteers, to not only empower the volunteers to get involved, but hopefully the volunteers are also empowering some of the children and other individuals in these after-school programs. These are wonderful, and it's clear that a lot of you have already started thinking about how your project aligns with the 4 principles and just different ways that, in this specific example, we're looking at principle number 2, empowering communities, how some of your VAD activities specifically focus on getting community members empowered. So thank you for sharing some of those examples. If at any point you are struggling with connecting your project to some of the principles, for example, empowering communities, keep in mind that some of these ideas in the chat panel may empower you to think of different ways that you can empower your communities. And also, we want to mention, don't forget that you can also create an account on the VISTA Campus website and share your ideas with each other about this webinar and more using the Supervisor Cafe discussion forum, a resource that is not used very much, but we would love it to be used widely so that supervisors can share more information with each other. So still on empowering communities, if you strive to empower your community, consider inviting community members to meetings, soliciting their input on various activities, and intentionally recommend that they be involved in different activities. encourage them to be a participant, and find out what the community actually needs and wants, as well as what motivates your community. You may already know that by now, given your experience as a supervisor or sponsor, or you may need to do some research to figure that out. But you and your VISTA member can work on that together. If there's an actual or perceived leader in the community, or someone the community listens to, consider having your VISTA member meet with that person to see how they can help enlist the support of the community. And we know some of you have VISTA members that live in the area, others have VISTAs that have relocated or will be relocating to your area. So whether your VISTA member is new or has been part of the community for a long time, it's important to give your VISTA member tips and ideas about what brings the community together based on your experience, and best practices as to how the VISTA member may want to try to engage and integrate the community. We know that it can be challenging for a community to trust and listen to someone who is only there for a one-year service term, not really knowing their motivation and their interest. So any support that you can give as their supervisor and integrating them into the community can really help bridge the gap and build them off for success.
All right, let's shift now and talk about the third principle, which is building capacity. And this concept might seem obvious, but lately at our VISTA member in-service training, we've been hearing a lot of feedback from VISTA members that some of their supervisors are not up to speed on this topic. And there's some frustration that comes around that. VISTAs being asked to perform duties that are not allowable. So that was a good reminder for us to take some time to review it here. Let's look at some ways of capacity building. The VISTA project, your VISTA project perhaps, may try to grow and expand services to individuals and families in poverty. Maybe you're trying to build capacity by helping your organization's services run more smoothly, more streamlined or effective way. Maybe you're trying to connect more individuals to the services that your organization offers, which would increase awareness and give individuals additional options for support. Ultimately, the VISTA project wants to scale up the work that it's doing so that it can positively impact more people. Remember that the VISTA program is not aimed at direct service, but building capacity of the sponsor to end poverty, empower communities, and create sustainable solutions. So if you feel that you can do more to bolster efforts to build capacity, think about practical and tangible ways that you can work with your VISTA member and their VAD, their assignment description. Think creatively in developing and sustaining programs as well as strengthening existing activities. You might want to go into detail to find out what specific capacity needs to be built. And then think about how you can work and collaborate with your VISTAs and work on their VISTA assignment description to create and expand their role. So to make sure that we're clear, we're going to give an example of the differences between capacity building type activities and direct service. So you might have completed a tutorial on the VISTA campus. It would make my heart happy if you did. It's called the VISTA Mission and Program. If you did that tutorial, then you probably learned that VISTA member service should focus on building the capacity of organizations rather than performing direct service. It's a unique aspect of the VISTA program and it sets it apart from all the other AmeriCorps programs. So quickly, capacity building is about helping your organizations to do more with what they have so that the organization can serve people or operate more efficiently. Direct service, on the other hand, is about providing tangible assistance directly to those who need it. So you can see here summarized some of the examples of the kinds of things that VISTA members can do in each of those categories. So let's take a look. In the capacity building category, recruiting volunteers to build houses. So here the VISTA member, of course, is not building the house. They're developing capacity in the form of a volunteer program and in the human capital of the volunteers themselves, who will then able to do the construction work. And of course, those volunteers can engage in the organization in other ways. Organizing a fundraiser. Raising resources, of course, is raising capacity, building capacity. The money raised builds the resources of the organization so it can do its work or do more of its work. Setting up partnerships. Here, the VISTA member is linking the community to the program or the project, and linking with other organizations, with people, with funds and resources to eliminate poverty. They're building capacity by helping community members find new ways to get things done and new partners to help them do it. In the direct service category, delivering meals to seniors, pretty obvious. Here it's just providing that pickup and delivery service. Once the VISTA member is gone, that meal delivery would come to an end. Now, if you were saying, well, gee, we're a meal delivery program, can we not have a VISTA member? Well, no, you could, but the VISTA wouldn't be delivering meals. Instead, the VISTA would do capacity building activities like improving the processes or the actual mechanics of the program, making it more efficient, putting together policies and procedures manual or improving that, developing partnerships, bringing in volunteers to do the meal delivery, all that kind of stuff. Teaching a financial literacy course to low-income individuals. Again, the VISTA member wouldn't do that activity directly themselves, but they could certainly do capacity building activities like developing that curriculum for the course itself, connecting with organizations that can refer clients, individuals to take the courses, identifying financial literacy experts who could advise on the curriculum and volunteers to teach it, all that kind of stuff. So I think you get the idea. All right, so we're going to use that example of teaching a financial literacy course, and I'm going to, again, we're going to do a little chat activity. And here, I want you to take a look at this, the activity that's written here in quotes on the screen. Teach a financial literacy course to low-income individuals to help them better manage their finances. So for this chat activity, what I'd like you to do is think about how you might reframe or reword this activity to focus it on capacity building. So this is one that, might show up on a VAD. Hopefully it doesn't, but it could show up on a VAD. Or you might have something like this on one of your VADs that really bleeds over into the direct service realm. So if you wanted to make this less direct service and more capacity building, how could you do that? How could you change it? All right, so Tina says, develop a course curriculum for financial literacy. Awesome. Develop a list of people who can assist in teaching the courses. Great curriculum. A lot of people recruit a volunteer or network. Awesome. Trainers. Okay, you guys got it. Excellent work.
Very nice.
So pulling all that together, we've got sort of an example of how it could be reworded here, and that is to develop, test, and implement a financial literacy course along with resources and materials. Create a train-the-trainer model for staff and volunteers to teach the course. Great. So these are things that many of you mentioned. There are different ways to showcase the capacity building elements of this activity, but hopefully you can see how this little example demonstrates how a VISTA member is creating capacity versus just doing a delivery. All right, so let's move on to the fourth principle, and that is creating sustainable solutions. If you happened to be with us back in August for that supervisor webinar, which was on VISTA project sustainability, you probably heard Eric mention that part of the sustainability piece is determining what aspects of the VISTA project need to be sustained, which things should continue after the VISTA member's gone. So once you've figured out that, then you begin thinking about how to make it happen. Options include things like documenting processes for others to follow, setting up a train-the-trainer so that other people will understand the information, what's been happening, and how it all got done, putting practices and procedures in place so that others can replicate projects and tasks. And of course, there's a lot more that can go in to sustainability. If you struggle to sustain some elements of your VISTA project, you might consider what elements should and really need to be sustained. Obviously, you're not going to keep everything going after the VISTA member is gone, especially if some of the goals that were laid out got accomplished. It may be that there are some things that don't continue simply because there's not enough information, or maybe along the way your VISTA member understood or discovered that these weren't really fruitful directions to pursue. So maybe there were some lessons learned. It's like, well, we thought we'd try it out, we did, and we're not going to continue that. But sometimes things fall off the off the table because there's not enough information for someone else to continue that task, or what's there isn't really clear or understandable, or maybe there weren't enough relationships built, and so the community didn't buy into it, and they have no interest in continuing it. So though your VISTA members serve in a way that contributes towards sustainability, the sustainability piece is the responsibility of you, the VISTA sponsor. So you should be thinking about this during the first year of your VISTA project, and then especially as you approach the last year of your project. How is it that you're going to keep things going? What does sustainability look like for your project? So here are some examples, some ideas of what you could do. You could talk to your VISTA member about the work that they're doing, remind them to document things, of course, and make sure that they're writing things down in a way that other people are going to understand them, after they're gone. Begin identifying and talking with staff and community members and volunteers about the project, and then specifically about how to continue that, those elements of it, again, once the VISTA's gone. And you might consider making a chart of the VISTA members' activities, and then next to each one, write down who's going to take that over after the VISTA members are finished. You might also need to think about how much work is going to be involved, timeline, training that's going to be required, and all of that, so that it's sort of a transition plan, a little bit of a sustainability plan for those major elements that you want to continue going after the VISTAs are gone. Of course, you're going to have to plan in some transition time so that before your last member finishes, that VISTA can be involved in the transition and training other people. I'm sure most of you do this, and that is to schedule an exit interview with your VISTA members so that as they're going, you're getting a lot of information about what worked well for them and all of that. But you can also hone in on the elements of transition and what you need to understand so that you can continue the project.
So we've just talked about each of the 4 principles. So one question I have is, which of these principles is the most important? Well, I'll give you a hint. Okay, it's a trick question. But keep in mind that the way these these principles are listed on the screen does not denote a specific level of importance, because all of them are critical to the VISTA program. Your VISTA project ideally should touch on all these principles in some way, because the VISTA program is about ending poverty by empowering communities to build capacity and create sustainable solutions. So in another minute, or right now, you will see a poll open up on your screen, and we'll leave it up for a brief moment. You can only select one answer, and we're asking you, which of these 4 principles do you most want to grow and expand in your VISTA project? We know that there might be multiple, but in this case you can only select one, and obviously you're choosing between ending poverty, empowering communities, building capacity, and creating sustainable solutions. And I'll just mention while you're quickly filling that out, whether or not you wrote the concept paper and application to get your VISTA project, you likely know at least the general project plan and the goals for the project, and ideally how it could relate to some or all of these principles. You may be a new staff member or a seasoned supervisor, but you also may have a desire to better align your project with all of these principles. Again, with this poll, you can only select one answer, and perhaps you've heard of a community member, a staff member, or a current or former VISTA member mention that they need more work in one of these areas. You may find it easier to think about the principles that are more evident and stronger in your project first, so then you know which principle you want to grow and expand. So we'll give you another maybe 5 seconds, then we'll go ahead and close the poll, and we'll take a look at the results to see which one of these you feel like you want to most grow in your project. So we're getting ready to publish the results in just a minute. I'm not sure which one I think the answer will be, but wow, it looks like most people, so if I read this correctly, Andy, I'm going to guess it means that a lot of people feel like their project already ties in with ending poverty, and most people want to grow the creating sustainable solutions and finding ways to keep various aspects of their project going.
Yeah, I would read that the same way. I mean, obviously, poverty is why we're all here. And I think some projects probably naturally lend themselves more to community empowerment, you know, over building capacity. Say, for example, of course, they're all important, but they'll all show up in different ways, I think, in each project. So, but there should be some element of all of them, I think, in every project.
Yes. And so thank you for doing that. We certainly know that things can change over time, and you do have the ability to adjust your goals and your VADs periodically as long as you get approval from your CNCS state or regional office. We know that the principle that you most want to grow and expand in your VISTA project now may be different from how you would answer 2 months from now. We really want you to think about all 4 principles as working together, with the unique detail of each principle aiding you in your work. So we're going to transition now in thinking about, now that we've explored the 4 principles in detail, you may have some new ideas, and perhaps you have questions as well as you move forward. Don't worry about trying to make drastic changes to your application or your project plan based on this webinar. Many of the thoughts that you may have could be well suited for making changes if you have to submit a continuation through your CNCS state and regional office, and as you think about future VISTA assignment descriptions and work that you need to be done. But just how do you make the alignment? Well, you should already know what's in your project plan, as it explains the purpose and the outline of your project. It provides a foundation for what's ahead, and gives an overview of your plan for the VISTA project. You can certainly feel like you have more to do to align your projects with the principles. And one suggestion we have is when you look at your project plan, reread it, and ask yourself a couple of questions. What is in the project plan that stands out in terms of VISTA's work? What elements in this project plan speak directly to any or all of VISTA's 4 key principles, similar to the activity we did earlier today? And then how can I better articulate and rephrase some of the wording so that it is focused on the principles? Again, these are just some examples, And unless your CNCF state or regional office tells you otherwise, you're not necessarily rewriting your entire project plan. That's a lot of work and unnecessary. So instead, you're making notes so that you better understand the plan and can articulate it effectively to your VISTA members and constituents with wording that focuses on the 4 principles. Some people do this activity on paper, others use a computer. Do what works for you, and be intentional about giving yourself enough time to really identify which parts of the project plan currently align with the 4 principles. We in VISTA talk a lot about VADs, VISTA assignment descriptions, and of course they're written for VISTA members to use every day in their service because they outline the goal, the objectives, and the specific member activities. As you know, each VISTA member should have their own VAD. You as a sponsor may have several VADs that you're responsible for. And one of the things that we look at when we look at the goal is, how is the goal connected to poverty? How is the goal connected to the 4 principles? When you look at the objective, does it clearly describe the capacity that the VISTA member is supposed to build? Is poverty mentioned anywhere in the objective, and how the VISTA member will actually help to eradicate it? When you then look down at the member activities, is it clear that the activities are focused on capacity building and sustainable activities? Do any of the activities need to be reworded in this similar vein that we did the example earlier? Towards the end of a VISTA member service year, there are activities listed that prepare the VISTA member to transfer the knowledge, products, and relationships to the next VISTA member or the organization. So as you talk with your VISTA members, make sure that you not only discuss the VADs with them, but also discuss the importance of these 4 key principles and why it's essential that the activities, the objectives, and the goal and the VAD align with them. Because the more that your VISTA member understands and sees the alignment, the better they will be able to explain their service and work to accomplish their VAD. So looking at the screen, here's an actual example of a VAD for us to examine its structure and its content, and then we'll do another quick poll activity. I'll read the scenario, and then you will see a quick poll on the screen for you to select which one of the 4 key principles this activity involves. The VISTA member starts on an activity that's in their VAD. Let's say the activity is to review materials and resources within the organization, to develop a curriculum for an after-school program. So it's very similar to the previous example we did. The community where the VISTA is serving has a high poverty rate and many low-income individuals, and there are a few options for children to be involved in after-school activities that are safe and off the streets. The curriculum will support education in the community and will also contain materials and training for people in the community to lead and implement the after-school activities. So as you see the poll come up, again, this is a quick poll. Which of the 4 key principles do you think this activity involves? Is this after-school activity focused on getting children off the streets? Do you think it's ending poverty, empowering communities, building capacity, creating sustainable solutions? We'll give you about 10 more seconds to answer since it's a very quick poll. Most of you got a lot of the other activities correct, so I think we're pretty good with people understanding the concepts, which is wonderful. So we'll go ahead and close the poll now, and we'll ask our team to produce the results when they're ready. And most people, by no surprise, said this activity focuses on empowering communities. And those of you who did not say empowering communities, you're also correct. This activity does focus on all of them, but in this case it does actually specifically look at empowering communities. So great, thank you for that again. You guys did a wonderful job. Before we move on, I'll simply mention the VISTA member can utilize the elements of each principle in their conversations and meetings with volunteers and community partners to explain why each of the principles are so important and how crucial they are, since the VISTA program, the VISTA program is not meant to be a permanent solution, but it's meant to help create sustainable solutions for your project. The VISTA member aids in empowering the community and getting them involved so that they can work to build their own capacity. Another way that VISTA sponsors can make really good use of VISTA's 4 key principles is ensuring that they are prevalent throughout the on-site orientation and training, or OSAT. This webinar does not have enough time to go through the whole recruitment process, but as you know, the OSAT is something that is the sponsor's responsibility to make sure that the VISTA is oriented to their site and their community. So make sure that your OSAT includes the 4 key principles of the VISTA program, how your organization is working to eliminate poverty in your community, information about the communities served by your project to include poverty rates, unemployment rates, educational attainment rates, and more, different ways to connect with the community, the capacity building roles that VISTA members do, and also include how VISTA members can better sustain their work. Within the on-site orientation and training, inserting these elements will really help give your VISTA member a solid foundation and a starting point in understanding what VISTA members do and the impact they can make. I'll briefly mention that this can also be tied into VISTA member outreach, simply that VISTA members have a story to tell. So giving them the opportunity to tell their story in relation to how it ends poverty, it builds sustainability, it builds capacity, and relates to all 4 principles is absolutely essential. So make sure that when you're talking to them and getting them to promote their VISTA service, you want to encourage them because their story can be very impactful for them and for your VISTA project as you look to recruit future VISTA members and volunteers. So now that we've covered quite a bit, here are some next steps, in addition to any other next steps that you want to carry out. And while I do go over the next steps, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat panel for us to queue up in a few minutes. As we started the process in this webinar, you want to spend more time reviewing your project plan and your VISTA assignment descriptions so that you can clearly identify the connection to the 4 key principles. That'll really help when you get questions from your VISTA members or community members about what VISTAs do. Second, if you do not already have a regularly scheduled weekly meeting with your VISTA members, it would be a good time to schedule one. And in that meeting, you can talk with your VISTA about their VAD and how each of the 4 principles relates to the different activities in their VAD. Third, when you need to adjust current VADs or create new ones, be creative in thinking about activities that will fulfill your project's goal and objectives while also connecting to VISTA's 4 key principles. And then fourth, if your project does have an opportunity for a continuation, for example, this is not your last year of the VISTA project and you're allowed to continue, that would be a good time to work with your CNCF state or regional office to make some realignments such that your project more closely pairs with VISTA's 4 key principles. So before we get to the question and answer session, we would ask you to please take a moment to respond to our survey. We're going to post the link in the chat. We greatly appreciate your feedback, and Andy, myself, and a few other people on our team here do very much read and evaluate these. Well, we don't evaluate the evaluations, but we review them. That's what I'm trying to say. Because your feedback is helpful not just for this webinar, but also in putting together future content for future webinars. So you'll see the link in the chat panel, and thank you for sharing your feedback. And as you complete the evaluation and provide your feedback, we will take this time to answer a few of your questions. Again, you can post your questions in the chat panel, and please be very specific about what your question is. We also do have the opportunity, if you'd like to ask a question by phone, in the participants section of the Zoom webinar. So if you don't see it, again, as Andy said, hover your mouse over the screen. You'll see the icon at the bottom of the screen that says participants. And underneath the participants section, you'll see a feature that says raise hand. If you'd like to ask a question by phone, you can click the raise hand feature, and our support team will be able to unmute your phone line. We'll take a minute to see if any questions come in. So the first question I see that came in is a great question. Thank you for this. Do I have to send you the worksheet about this webinar, or is the worksheet to work with my VISTA member and my organization? I'm guessing you're referring to the worksheet that we posted as a handout for this presentation on the VISTA campus. And no, you do not need to turn that into us. That worksheet is simply for you to take a look at. It gives you step-by-step instructions as how you can look at your project plan and your VADs and really think about ways you can see how it's currently aligned with the 4 principles and ways you might want to enhance that. So you do not need to turn it into us. It might be something that you want to share with your VISTAs or at least share with some of your other organizational staff that work on the VISTA program. And you also certainly, especially if you have any questions, you may want to share it with your CNCS state and regional office to see if they have any other ideas or questions.
Right, and just as a reminder, earlier in the webinar we posted this, but I'm putting it in the chat right now, I think, is a link to the page where we have all the handouts from this session so that you can download a copy of the slides. There's a list of all the links and the resources that we mentioned, as well as that worksheet. It's really just a few questions, some of the things that we already had talked about, so that you can then, do that when you've got a little bit of time to think about your own project plan and your own VADs. Let's see, so Alicia says, is there a link to the webinar? Yeah, so we're recording the session. Once we have that recording and we can add captioning and the rest, we'll post that on the campus and we'll send out an email with a link to it. You can also just go to the VISTA campus, to the webinars for supervisors page, and it will be listed there as well.
And one other question that came in earlier was more general, but a very good question, was what process would I need to follow if I wanted to make some adjustments or changes to my VISTA project, especially if I felt like I needed to or wanted to revise my VADs? Great question. Anytime you want to revise anything related to your VISTA project, even if you think it's the greatest idea ever, which it probably is, you definitely want to put that in writing and send it to your CNCS state or regional office. As you know, they're the ones who have to approve any changes to your VISTA assignment descriptions or your project. But definitely try to make it as clear as possible so that when you send it to them, it's pretty evident to them what's changed and why you changed it.
Great. So a question here from Bobby. How important is it for a VISTA member to have identifiers like button, T-shirt, swag when they are with the public? AmeriCorps members always wear their A's, for example. So with VISTA, of course, it's great if they can represent the program and be identified in that way. But we know that VISTA members are often working in professional settings where wearing a T-shirt wouldn't be appropriate, right? Like they might need to have a jacket on, or, so even if they had on a polo shirt, it, might not be the best way to represent the project, your organization, and the VISTA program. So we don't really make a global request around that. But obviously, if they can wear a lapel pin, with anything, that's at a minimum something that could be done. And because VISTAs often work behind the scenes, what's often more effective is making sure that their email signature block includes that they're an AmeriCorps VISTA member, include the AmeriCorps VISTA logo, along, of course, with your organization's logo. So that branding is going to go out and be seen many more times than probably your VISTA is actually out in the community. So, so wherever possible, it's great. But we don't really have a specific requirement around that. So follow-up question, Dee Dee says, hey, we've never seen a lapel pin, just a really big button. So when your VISTA members start, they can order a lapel pin as part of their group of materials. Their polo shirts, T-shirts, a water bottle, a journal. They get all that stuff free when they start, and they just have to make sure that they're checking the box for the lapel pin.
And so I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Certainly if there's one or two other questions that come in, we can answer them. I'll say that as you do have additional questions, especially as they relate to the 4 principles, Again, definitely check with your CNCS state and regional office in case they have any questions or advice for you in your project as it relates to your VADs. Take a look at the Vista Campus website in addition to the resources that Andy posted the link to in the chat, because that'll give you some additional resources where you can think about ways to align your project. And then you also make sure you make use of the Vista Cafe forums on the Vista Campus. Really, it's a great way to share ideas and answer questions share ideas and ask questions for other supervisors. So I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. And so I just want to quickly say thank you for joining us on today's webinar. As you know, we do monthly webinars, and so the next webinar that we have scheduled, you can put this on your calendars, is called The Fundamentals of Managing Multiple VISTA Project Sites. This webinar is ideal for any supervisor or sponsor staff that's an intermediary or has multiple sites as part of their VISTA project and really want to know what are some tips, tricks, tools, etc., everything that starts with a T. Terrific idea. There's another T. Tuesday, November 19th at 2 p.m. And the registration link should be available soon, but we look forward to seeing you on that webinar. And then finally, as we move to thank you, we want to thank you for joining us on today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you again. Special thanks to my co-presenter and the man behind much of the content for this webinar, Andy King, for his great presentation and all the work that he normally does with the VISTA program. I want to thank my support team, Barbara Reynolds, thank our partners, Jeff and Kim at LSI, for helping to manage the Zoom technology. And of course, we also want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your ideas. We hope that you have a great day. And from all of us here at VISTA and the Corporation for National and Community Service, thank you for serving in the extremely important and meaningful role of VISTA supervisor or sponsor. This concludes today's webinar. Have a great day.